Today we're discussing right action, which is a continuation of our exploration of the Eightfold Path. In Buddhist teachings, there are three primary types of karma: mental karma, karma of thought; verbal karma, karma of speech; and physical karma, karma of bodily action. We've previously learned that right thought is mental karma and right speech is verbal karma. Today, we're focusing on right action, which encompasses physical deeds. Right action as a form of karma isn't always straightforward. When we talk about action in this context, it includes all other forms of karma, such as thought and speech. Therefore, when the teaching reaches the point of right action, it already covers all our behaviors that generate karmic results for the future. This means right action, the karma of physical deeds, is all-encompassing. Why? Because to perform an action, we usually first need a thought, and to complete that action, we often need words. For instance, if you want to help someone, your mind first needs to feel compassion. Then, when you approach them to offer money, you don't just silently hand it over, do you? You don't just throw it at them. You have to say something, perhaps gently insisting, "Please take this." They might initially feel awkward, but they'll accept it, especially if you add a few comforting words like, "It's okay, just take a little for your expenses for the children." Then they might sigh and say, "Oh, that's too much." But they'll take it. So, for an act of generosity, dana, a good thought is present, but supportive words are also needed to complete the action of giving the money. Without them, it's much harder for someone to accept. Similarly, if you're plotting revenge against someone, your mind must be filled with hatred, anger, and intricate schemes. You arrange everything, then begin to speak about it. And if you want to harm someone, you might instruct others to block their path or curse them. All these require preparatory thoughts and words. Therefore, for an action to become karma, it's usually supported by the karma of thought and the karma of speech. So today we're learning about right action. In fact, all karmas in the world, from ordinary actions to those of enlightened beings, fall under right action. We distinguish right from wrong. Here we have wrong action or unwholesome action, which leads sentient beings to the three lower realms: hell, hungry ghosts, and animals. On the other hand, right action or wholesome action leads sentient beings to the heavenly realms or to liberation. As for the human realm or the Asura realm, these are not purely good or purely bad. They are in between. The human realm isn't entirely good either, as we experience both good and bad, happiness and suffering. Asuras are beings who live in realms of happiness due to past merit, but their minds weren't entirely wholesome or virtuous. Therefore, the seeds of suffering still exist abundantly in the Asura realm. We sometimes call them gods in certain folk traditions, but in Indian scriptures they are called Asuras. In various East Asian folk traditions, they are called gods, beings who, during their lives, made significant contributions to the community, nation, or society. However, when they achieved those glorious victories, they also harbored a bit of arrogance, pride, or anger. So, these beings often become gods in popular belief. For example, imagine a high-ranking police officer who uncovers major crimes and achieves resounding successes, earning respect. These are great contributions to the nation. But if that person also carries a bit of arrogance or a temper, they might not ascend to the heavenly realms after death, but often end up in the Asura realm. So there are three categories. Unwholesome actions lead to hell, hungry ghosts, and animals, with hell being the most miserable. Wholesome actions lead to heavenly realms or liberation. And the mix of good and bad leads to the human or Asura realms. When we study right action, which is part of the Eightfold Path, it's the path of 8 right practices that lead us to liberation. So, everything we've learned so far has the goal of leading us to liberation. That's the clear objective. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha repeatedly affirms this, stating, "Among paths, the Eightfold Path is the best. Of truths, the Four Noble Truths are the best. Of virtues, detachment is the best. Among all things, nirvana is the highest bliss. This is the only path. There is no other for the purification of insight. Follow this path, it will lead you to the end of suffering." So, we learn the Eightfold Path as the path to liberation. And right action is also an important step on this path. And remember, it's right action, not no action. This point is crucial because we often misunderstand this. We become weak or misunderstand because we interpret it incorrectly. We study many sutras, from early Buddhist texts to Mahayana sutras, but we misunderstand. We interpret right action as no action. We think that no action leads to liberation, while right action doesn't. But we've misunderstood. We think no action leads to liberation. What does no action mean? It means doing nothing. Doing nothing at all does not lead to liberation. Please remember this. Doing nothing at all does not lead to liberation. To attain liberation, you must act correctly, live correctly, not do nothing at all. However, many people misunderstand this teaching, thinking that to achieve liberation, they must abandon the world, go into seclusion, avoid all interactions, and forsake all responsibilities. Is that how we understand it? Yes, most of us understand it that way, and that is a grave wrong view. Some places organize retreats that teach people to practice intensive concentration and detachment, even encouraging them to ignore those around them, advising, don't bother with external matters. When walking meditation, just focus your mind. If you see trash, don't pick it up because that means your mind is distracted. So, is that right action? Does that lead to liberation? No. Many places praise this path, thinking it's diligence, but unknowingly it leads to a completely different path. In reality, on the Eightfold Path to Liberation, it is right action, not non-action. This misunderstanding often arises because some in early Buddhism only knew how to practice concentration, focus the mind, abandon everything, and thus fell into non-action. Or in Mahayana, hearing about emptiness, they ended up doing nothing at all, which also falls into non-action, not right action. We have deviated from the Eightfold Path, preventing ourselves from achieving liberation. We ourselves don't have the formula for liberation, and it even weakens Buddhism. Buddhism is weakened because many people have misunderstood that non-action leads to liberation, and this has been going on for thousands of years. So today, as we study this topic, let's pray to the three jewels for ourselves and for the Dharma across the entire earth, that everyone understands this point correctly. Right action leads to liberation, not non-action. This coming Sunday, the 21st, we will begin studying the Diamond Sutra, Vajraketaka Prajnaparamita Sutra. We will delve into the concept of emptiness, sunyata, in Mahayana, reaching a new level of understanding how to interpret emptiness so as not to fall into non-action. At this point, we can recall a story by Aziz Nesin, a humorous Turkish writer. He wrote satirical stories about politics in Turkey where several parties competed for power. There was one party that consistently failed to win power. They used all sorts of tricks, schemes, and propaganda methods to get elected, but they always lost. During one party meeting, someone stood up and proposed a final, brilliant idea. If we follow this plan, the opposing party will be destroyed. Others asked, if we destroy them, won't we violate the law? He replied, no, we won't violate any laws. We'll simply have all our party members join their party. Everyone will be confused. We've been opposing them, competing with them. Why would we join their party? He explained, first, we must join their party. Then, once we're in, we'll try to seize important positions within that party. After we hold important positions, we'll do nothing. Then that party will destroy itself. Isn't that right? If you do nothing, everything falls apart. I wonder if anyone has taken that path in Buddhism. I wonder if anyone has joined Buddhism, become a Buddhist practitioner, and then done nothing at all, causing Buddhism to weaken and decline. Has anyone infiltrated Buddhism with that intention? So this is a point we must clarify. From now on, if anyone deep in their heart thinks that by remaining idle, doing nothing, and not bothering with anything in this world, they can achieve liberation, then please discard that idea. Today's lesson should make you abandon that thought. And if you meet anyone else, whether a lay Buddhist or even someone from another religion, who holds that idea that doing nothing leads to liberation, we must try to stop them, help them see that they are on the wrong path. It is right action within the Eightfold Path that leads to liberation, not non-action. In Mahayana scriptures, there are often passages about non-abiding, non-action, and non-thought. If these are understood as doing nothing at all, that's a misunderstanding of right action. Right action is a step on the Eightfold Path that leads to liberation. The goal of right action is merit. Remember this, if anyone asks you what is right action for, the answer is right action aims to create merit for the purpose of liberation. Remember to create merit. Without merit, you cannot achieve liberation. Remember this detail, you must have merit to achieve liberation. To illustrate this further, let's say we practice to purify our minds. We don't distinguish between different Dharma paths. Those who prefer right action practice right action. Those who prefer chanting the Buddha's name chant. Those who prefer breath meditation practice breath meditation. Those who prefer chanting mantras chant mantras. All these methods are good, but to achieve a pure mind, we must have merit. Remember that. It's not about keeping your mind free from disturbance to achieve purity. Such reasoning is narrow, incomplete, and flawed. Why? Because with such reasoning, it's easy to misunderstand. For example, if you say, to have a pure mind, don't think. And how do you not think? By not bothering with worldly affairs. This line of reasoning seems easy to understand and obvious, but it's actually wrong. Because truth is always indirect. Truth is a roundabout path. Be careful if something seems too easy to understand or too obvious. It's probably flawed. For example, you see a rich person who is very successful in business. You observe them and say, this person got rich because they worked hard. Does that seem easy to understand? Right? Seems easy to understand. But is it completely true? Not yet. There are a million other factors involved, such as their astuteness, their benevolence, their reputation with customers, and the merit from past lives that brought them good fortune in this life. There are so many factors, not just hard work. Many people work very hard but go from one failure to another, even though they are very diligent in business. What we observe superficially and quickly conclude is often wrong. There was a story in the newspaper about a car repair shop. This shop didn't take in unruly apprentices. Instead, the owner taught them proper manners. When apprentices came to learn car repair, they had to know how to greet people politely, say goodbye when leaving, and absolutely no cursing. When dealing with customers, they had to hand money and change with both hands, and respectfully address them. After a while, parents who had sent their children there for training would come in and cry, saying that in decades, their children had never been so well behaved. This respectful style built trust with customers. People would bring their cars to this shop, feeling at ease and comfortable knowing they would be treated well. As a result, the shop became busy. And the apprentices progressed quickly because they had many cars to practice on. So, to achieve success, there are many factors: being loved by everyone, having a benevolent heart, being intelligent, having a strong sense of responsibility, and so on. Similarly, when we practice to achieve a pure mind, don't simply think that by abandoning all worldly matters and not thinking, your mind will become pure. Many people have tried that. They spend an entire day not thinking, not bothering with anything, doing nothing at all, sitting cross-legged, hoping their mind will become pure. But it doesn't. Why? Because where do thoughts come from? You don't want them, but they just keep arising from within, right? You remember old stories, future dreams, searching the past, trying to grasp the present. It's impossible to control. At that point, you realize that even if you do nothing all day, hoping to be at peace, and sit cross-legged in meditation, your mind won't be pure. The elements of a pure mind come from some other secret factor, not just abandoning work. Some other secret factor. An underlying influence is merit. That's right, merit. It's a secret we don't realize when trying to keep our minds pure. So, instead of a day where we do nothing, let's try a day where we do many wholesome deeds. If, on a certain day, we work hard, helping others, doing many wholesome deeds, then when we sit cross-legged at night, suddenly our mind is very peaceful. Have you experienced this? Some people have. For example, if a neighbor gets sick and is alone in the hospital, and no one is around to care for them, you rush over to help. You might even go to the market, buy food, bring it to the temple, and offer it. You're busy all day, cooking meals, helping out, and when you finally sit cross-legged at night, your mind is very pure. Even when busy, your mind is at peace. You might think, if I'm busy, my mind will be agitated. But no, the more busy you are helping others, the more peaceful your mind becomes when you meditate. If you just say, I'll do nothing to keep my mind pure, then at night your mind will become agitated. Therefore, we must understand that the Eightfold Path laid out by the Buddha is that right action leads to liberation. That is, right action creates merit, and that merit leads our minds to stability, samadhi. So, when we understand this, all of us Buddhists, both monastics and lay practitioners, must be diligent and persistent in creating merit to achieve the goal of liberation. Let's clarify this point. Right action aims to create merit for the purpose of liberation. Stop right there, don't add anything more. Because if you add a few more words, the whole lecture will be ruined. For instance, if you add liberation for myself, then this lecture becomes useless. So, just liberation. Don't say anything more. Whose liberation? If you say my own liberation, how can you liberate sentient beings? So, for whom? If you say for myself, that's wrong. If you say for sentient beings, that's also wrong because you haven't been liberated yourself. So how can you liberate sentient beings? Both answers are flawed. So how should we answer? For whom? For both myself and sentient beings, so we can be sure, right? That's clever. To truly understand this, on the 21st, when we study the Diamond Sutra, we will gradually understand it. The Diamond Sutra addresses the problems of the Four Noble Truths very well. The Diamond Sutra contains 4 concepts: self, person, sentient being, and lifespan. Have you Buddhists heard of them? Those who know will have heard, but newcomers to Buddhism might not have. So, mark your calendars, we'll talk about them then. According to right view, self and others are one. Remember that. But now we're all still entangled in wrong views. So we see ourselves and sentient beings as separate. That's why we say, if I'm liberated, it's liberation for myself. Or if we're clever, we say, it's liberation for sentient beings, and then add, for myself and sentient beings. But actually, according to right view, self and others are one. There's no addition or subtraction, it's simply one. Why do I say self and sentient beings are one? It's from a perspective. For example, sitting here now, we look down at the lay practitioners and see 2 distinct parts. Myself and the audience, the lay practitioners. So we say I and they, sentient beings. That's one perspective. But what if we look from the sky? From above, do we see the monk and the lay practitioners as 2 separate parts? No. We just see a group of people sitting in a lecture hall. People sitting at the table, people sitting on chairs, they're all one group. Or from an even higher floor, the monk looking down also wouldn't see 2 separate parts. But from the perspective of heavenly beings looking down, do they see the abbot and us here as 2? No. They just see a group of sentient beings in the pagoda, all as one. It's all about perspective. So, for example, if you lay practitioners look up, how many parts do you see? 3? 1 is yourself. Then there's the person speaking, and then there are the people sitting around you. You see 3, right? That's your perspective. But now, let's step outside of ourselves. Imagine we are the air, looking at everything. Then we'd see ourselves and others as just one group. It's only a matter of perspective. Therefore, in right view, we don't rely on our own self to perceive things. We step outside of ourselves and imagine we are the air, looking at everything, and then we see that all is one. Try to imagine being the air. Have you done it? Do you see it as one? Yes. Some people are nodding, so they're already quite skilled. So, the issue we're discussing is that right action, which involves merit. And understanding merit is the power that carries us on the path to liberation. We need to recognize this power. In English, power also means a source of energy, like fuel. Just like when we travel from home to the pagoda, we need fuel, right? What kind of fuel? Either gasoline or electricity. If you ride a motorbike, your fuel is gasoline. If you take a taxi or a motorbike taxi, your fuel is money. If you walk, your fuel is rice. Remember that. If someone has no gasoline, no money, and no rice, they can't go anywhere. They'll just lie there or lie stranded on the road. So if you don't have that power, that strength to reach your destination, you can't get there. Similarly, to reach the destination of liberation, you need fuel, which is merit. And to create that fuel, that merit, is precisely right action. Today, we're talking about this. The creation of merit is very important on our spiritual path. It helps us overcome many difficulties and obstacles in our lives, resolve our past mistakes, and delve deeper into selflessness. We just mentioned 3 things. 3 things we must confront when we practice. First, obstacles due to circumstances. For example, if you're too hungry, can you practice? No way. If you don't know what you're eating for dinner, you can't sit and listen to the Dharma. That's why we sit here peacefully listening to the Dharma, because we know for sure we have rice for tonight, right? We probably have some food and don't worry too much about our livelihood or adverse circumstances, which allows us to sit here and listen to the Dharma to practice. So, Adverse circumstances will come, but if we have merit, we can overcome them. That's one thing. Second, merit helps our minds easily enter tranquility in meditation. This is the secret power that influences our brains, allowing our minds to become tranquil. And third, merit helps us overcome our faults. Don't think that these faults can simply be abandoned. No. For example, if you have a hot temper and someone says a few irritating words, you immediately flare up. You say you won't get angry anymore. Can you just abandon it? No, when something happens, you still get angry. How do you stop it? Surprisingly, when you go to the temple, sweep the temple, give charity to the poor, bow to the Buddha, offer to the Sangha, then when an irritating situation arises, you won't get angry. Instead, your mind will hold down the anger. You will perceive the powerful secret in your mind, and that is merit. So, merit also helps us overcome our faults. Remember that. In this life, when we see someone with faults, we must understand that they lack something, they lack merit. When you understand this, you'll also feel compassion for those with faults, instead of just criticizing them. For instance, if you see someone behaving badly, if you don't understand karma, you might criticize them. But if you understand karma, you'll pity them. They lack merit, so their inner faults are not subdued and they keep acting out. And the more they act out, the more they create unwholesome karma. And the more their merit is depleted. Now, consider people addicted to drugs who steal to get money. You immediately know that these people are full of faults and the path awaiting them is prison. It's clear. You also know that they lack merit. Because they lack merit, it's hard for them to do good and unwholesome impulses arise strongly. They don't know how to control themselves and are constantly driven by inner evil impulses to do bad things. Therefore, we understand that if our minds still have faults, what do we need to overcome them? We need merit. We must remember this. You must take a roundabout path, not a direct one. For example, if you lack patience and feel discouraged and give up, saying, "Oh, I'm too discouraged to continue," then you lack patience. That also means you lack merit. Remember that. And to acquire it, don't just endure it by force because you'll give up halfway. What you need to do is to create merit, help others, make offerings to the Buddha, and be kind to everyone. Then, naturally, a certain power will arise in your mind, allowing you to overcome all difficulties in your new endeavors and ultimately complete the task. So, when we say right action generates merit, and this merit is our power to liberation, it means that merit creates favorable circumstances for us to live peacefully without difficulties, obstacles, or dangers. Second, it makes it easy for our minds to settle in meditation and enter selflessness. And third, it helps us control and distinguish our inner faults. All of this is thanks to merit. Merit is the fuel that leads us to liberation. However, there's also something we need to be careful about. Merit often produces a karmic result of happiness in the heavenly realms and human realms. This is a side effect, and often when we practice the Eightfold Path, when we practice right action by diligently creating merit. Don't assume that all the merit we create will be used entirely for our spiritual practice. Because if that were the case, we would attain liberation too quickly. If we used all our merit to go straight into meditative absorption and selflessness, we'd achieve liberation very quickly. But unfortunately, merit also has an obstacle. It often creates blessings in the heavenly and human realms. For example, if you do a lot of good deeds, make offerings to the Buddha, help others, and you're kind and virtuous, a truly wonderful person, then after you die, you might be reborn in a heavenly realm where everything is blissful, where you get whatever you wish for. Or you might be reborn as a human in a position of great power and influence. From the moment you open your eyes, you have servants, you travel in fancy cars, you eat only the finest food, and your milk has to be specially prepared. So you don't even want to enjoy it, but at that moment you can't control what you want to do for yourself. Circumstances force you to enjoy those blessings. This side effect of merit means that we don't consolidate all our blessings within our minds to achieve meditative absorption. Instead, they scatter outwards into our circumstances, making us too comfortable and blissful. That's a drawback of merit, a disadvantage. But on the other hand, it's a rule. When we grow up and become independent, we begin to learn how to renounce karmic results to hold onto our blessings within our minds. If we let them dissipate into external circumstances, we lose the other two benefits. We lose the ability to enter meditative absorption and the ability to control our faults. But if we renounce external blessings, then that merit will be used within our minds, leading us to meditative absorption and helping us avoid faults. So, if we forget or are too young to control ourselves, the karmic result of merit manifests in external circumstances, causing us to indulge in pleasure. This reduces and depletes our energy. It doesn't lead us to liberation quickly. That's also a drawback. So, knowing this, we must be careful. If we lack the ideal of liberation, then as soon as the karmic result appears, we will sink into indulgence and lose the merit needed for liberation. That's the principle. Therefore, when we practice right action, meaning we do countless wholesome deeds, every day we must vow before the Buddha altar, making a great aspiration. May all Buddhas in all lifetimes protect and preserve me so that I always cherish the goal of liberation in my heart, both in this life and in countless future lives. And whether I am in extremely difficult or extremely blissful circumstances, may I never forget my vow to practice for liberation. We must make such an aspiration every day. Then when the karmic result of bliss appears, thanks to the strong aspiration we make every night, we will firmly hold it in our minds. We will transcend those blissful circumstances to use them for our practice. But if we only focus on doing good deeds and forget to make our aspirations every night, then later, when we become too blissful, we will stray from the path. Even if we have a connection to the Dharma, we might still seek out temples, chant sutras, and make offerings, but we'll lose the will to practice for liberation. Why? Because we'll see that we're happy without practicing, and we'll lose our way. Therefore, those who practice right action and do countless wholesome deeds must remember to make their great aspirations daily to guide their lives through countless cycles of samsara, so they don't get lost when immense blessings arrive. Because those who know how to practice right action, as we'll see later, create merit every moment, every hour, every minute. We'll discuss that later. So, while we create boundless merit, we must also prepare ourselves with the fortitude to practice, knowing how to renounce the results of defilement. What does it mean to prepare ourselves with the fortitude to practice and renounce the results of defilement? It means that even while we're practicing right action, we must also practice meditation, uphold precepts, make aspirations, and strive for a simple life. Then, when blessings come, we'll naturally have the inner strength to renounce those excessive pleasures, or at least share them rather than enjoying them entirely. Renouncing and sharing allows the blessings to remain within our minds, consolidating the merit within us. But if we selfishly cling to and keep everything for ourselves, the merit will manifest externally in our circumstances, flowing into bank accounts, houses, and luxury cars. It won't stay in our minds. If we renounce a little and keep it in our minds, that's the fortitude of practice, knowing how to renounce some of the defiled karmic results. We also need to have wisdom to use our blessings when we achieve enlightenment and save sentient beings, or when we perform Buddha activities. One day, when blessings come and we have power and wealth, we must know how to use those things to benefit the Dharma and sentient beings, not to glorify our own ego. For example, a person with power shouldn't use it to force others to obey them, satisfying their craving for power and glorifying their ego. Instead, they should use that power to arrange for everyone to practice well, benefiting the Dharma and advancing it. This is called engaging in Dharma activities and saving sentient beings, or acting as a Buddhist lay practitioner. This is if you have the blessings, meaning you have wisdom and fortitude. Now, let's analyze what right action entails. First, right action involves upholding precepts. Upholding precepts is right action, but it belongs to the category of not doing. There are wrong things that shouldn't be done, and that's called upholding precepts. In the first 13 years of his ministry, the Buddha didn't lay down specific precepts. During that time, he only taught the Dharma, explaining principles. When people heard the Dharma and practiced, they naturally knew what was right to do and what was wrong to avoid. So, the Buddha didn't forbid anything explicitly. During that time, people progressed well and many attained enlightenment. After 13 years, the Sangha grew large and some people joined who weren't entirely pure, leading to violations and mistakes. These violations and mistakes forced the Buddha to establish precepts. So, precepts are not the Dharma, not the doctrine. They are restrictions, prohibitions. Things that are forbidden or strictly prohibited are called precepts. So, the precepts the Buddha laid down are also called right action. Thus, the Dharma is the root and precepts are the branches. The Dharma provides many branches, and precepts are one of those branches. In the first 13 years, the Buddha didn't speak of precepts, only Dharma. And the monastics lived very peacefully and virtuously. Only after 13 years, when violations began, did he establish precepts. Therefore, we know that the Dharma is the root, and precepts are the branches. However, later, many who expounded on precepts overly emphasized them, leading people to believe that precepts were the root. They even said, "I'd rather die than violate a precept." This is very noble, but it depends on the circumstances. There's a story in a legend about two monks traveling. They were very thirsty and found a spring. The Buddha's rule was that when drinking water, you had to filter it with a cloth filter because there might be insects. You shouldn't drink without filtering, consuming insects. One monk didn't have a filter and was too thirsty, so he just drank and continued. The other monk refused to drink because he had no filter and he died of thirst on the way. The story praises the monk who died of thirst to uphold the precept, saying the Buddha praised him. But I say, in the first 13 years, the Buddha didn't lay down precepts that were so strict that one had to die of thirst to uphold them. That's not a high-level, heroic, or martyred act. It's not that difficult. So, many people tell such stories to portray precepts as the root, exaggerating their importance to such an extreme that it's not truly in line with the spirit of the Buddha. The purpose of precepts is this: don't cause suffering to others. We must remember this. The purpose of precepts is to not cause suffering to others. Because if you cause suffering to others, it means your mind is agitated, and later your own mind will also be agitated and restless. So don't cause suffering to others. For example, if people are living peacefully and you sneak into someone's house and steal something, they lose money and become sad, right? Many people even die from such grief. So, by making others uneasy, you lose your own peace of mind. That's why such actions are forbidden. For example, drinking alcohol. Normally, if alcohol doesn't affect anyone else, it's not a major karma. But once you drink to the point where you get a temper, a father once told his son, "Son, you can go to a bar and drink, but you need to know how to drink like an adult. When you're older, I'll let you drink, but when you're at the bar, look at those two people in the corner. If you start seeing 4 people instead of 2, you know you're drunk. You need to go home. Don't drink anymore." The child looked and said, "Dad, there's only one person there." The parents laughed, realizing he wasn't drunk yet. "Son, when you see those 2 people in the corner as 4, you must go home." The child looked, "Dad, there's only one person," meaning he was completely drunk. So, when you drink to the point where you cause trouble for your neighbors, when you create suffering for those around you, that's when you start creating unwholesome karma, and that's when it's forbidden. At that time, there were no drugs or ecstasy, but if there were, the Buddha would have included them in the precepts very strictly, right? And many other things that cause suffering to others. This includes the precept regarding male-female relationships. Now, we say that concerning love, normally, as people grow up, everyone experiences love, gets married, has children, and starts a new family. It's a natural progression. But the Buddha said that love is the cause of suffering. Love is the cause of suffering. I'm not very familiar with this. Perhaps a Western expert can explain it better. The Buddha said love is the cause of suffering. Why? For example, when you lay practitioners love someone, you will love them. Then, when you hate them, when that person doesn't treat you well, or treats others well, you get jealous, right? When they forget you, you get angry. When you meet them, you blame them. There are many such things. So all that loving, missing, getting angry, resenting, blaming, is that peaceful or restless? It's extremely restless. So when we love someone, we're usually restless. Therefore, if we don't love anyone, we'll be less restless, right? That's probably it. So, if we cause someone to love us, we're leading them into restlessness, aren't we? So, don't induce anyone to love you. Can you do that? Don't love anyone and don't let anyone love you. Can anyone live like that? No one raised their hand. It means we're talking about not causing suffering to others. Not causing suffering to others in many ways, even if some suffering is very sweet, as we just discussed. Let's look at the rule: debts must be paid, but surplus money can be given away. What does this mean? If we cause suffering to others, we will surely suffer later. But if we bring peace and tranquility to others, we will be happy later. And we can choose to refuse that happiness. For example, if you win the lottery, say you win 1 billion dong. If you owe 1 billion dong, you must pay it back. But if you have 1 billion dong, you can give it all away. You have the right to give it away. So, blessings can be given away or refused, but debts must be paid. Therefore, we must create a lot of merit but also uphold precepts. Upholding precepts prevents us from having to repay karmic results later. And if we create a lot of merit later when karmic results come, we can give them away and don't need to enjoy them. This is always the principle. Right action is like that, creating a lot of merit but still upholding precepts to avoid defiled karmic results because we can't bear them all. Those who have loved often dream a lot. In general, anyone who has loved knows this already. Many people think they know how to love. Did you remember what happens when you love someone? In the precepts, is there anything about music? The precepts state that one should not listen to music, watch dancing, or attend theatrical performances, and one should not dance themselves. Why? Because at that time, there was no Buddhist music. The Buddha had just appeared, so no musicians were composing Buddhist music. The music of that era was mostly love songs. If a practitioner listened to love songs, their mind would become agitated and confused. And music easily makes people imitate. We remember our own psychology when we were young. When we were young, we liked to play musical instruments, so we would sit and play. If we heard a good song, we'd buy the sheet music and play it. Most of it was love songs. And psychologically, when we played a love song, we imagined we were in love, secretly passionate. Only when one has been a monastic for a long time, at this age, playing a love song has no effect. Because they only care if the composer wrote a good melody or not being affected by the lyrics. But in the beginning, one is affected by the lyrics. That's why the Buddha forbade listening to music and watching dancing. And dancing, mostly women dance, wearing less modest clothing. If you stare at a woman's body, your mind will be agitated, restless. Remember that principle. Why? Because it's a natural principle that the female form is always alluring. That's a principle of creation. We're not blaming women. It's just how nature creates a trap for people to marry and have children. So, the female body is always alluring. That's a principle. And that's why in East Asia, people understood this. And the sages taught women to dress modestly. That's East Asian culture. Islam, being extreme, absolutely forbids women from showing even their eyes or feet when walking on the street, to prevent men from being aroused. So, Islam isn't entirely wrong on this point, but they are a bit extreme. Only in the West has the issue been reversed, allowing women to dress too revealingly, which causes men to be aroused, and that's why Western society is chaotic. Don't blame men for sexually harassing or assaulting women, because women themselves invite it through their revealing clothing. We just saw a news report recently about female singers dressing too revealingly on stage, right? We don't go to concerts. But when the newspaper captured the screen, we saw it. They criticized the fashion as terrible. That goes against East Asian culture. The Ministry of Information and Culture should have regulated this a long time ago. Now it's just starting to appear in the news, even though we claim to preserve our national identity and East Asian culture. But we let women dress revealingly and perform on stage. Once, we had to attend a market event. A young woman from abroad wore something that showed her belly button. Everyone in the mall stared because Vietnamese people aren't used to that sight. We also happened to see it. It wasn't intentional, but it saddened us internally that someone dressed like that. And then young girls would imitate them, walking around showing their belly buttons. It's truly a waste of money and causes stomachaches from the wind. Let's go back to music. Music is an emotional step that invites people to sink deeper into the delicate relationships of love and sex with life. That's why the Buddha opposed and forbade it. However, one thing cannot be denied. Music is an important spiritual food for humans throughout all ages. Does anyone here dislike listening to music? Tell the truth. No one? The person who raised their hand is very old. If you don't like music, your soul is dry. That's what I would say. So, don't think I'm praising you. I'm criticizing you. Most people here have a somewhat moist soul and like to listen to music. Music is spiritual food, it cannot be denied. In fact, a writer once wrote in a book that in the wild west of America, bandits were common. A farmer was going from the countryside to town to buy groceries. On the way, he encountered two robbers who shot him and stole his belongings. It was a simple story. After they killed him and took everything, they left the main road and went to another place in the forest. As they were stripping his clothes that night to see what he had besides money, they found a harmonica. When they opened it, instrumental music, played. The two robbers cried. The story ends there. What did the author want to convey with that story? It means that music softens people, and when they are softened, they are more likely to feel compassion for others. They may shed tears of remorse for killing someone. So, music softens even hardened people. That's the author's personal opinion. It hasn't become a universal principle. But the allure of music is undeniable, right? It's undeniable. So, if we reject music, we reject a huge part of propagating and saving sentient beings. Buddhism doesn't attract young, educated people partly because we haven't utilized music properly. Many young, educated people come to us and say, "Master, my wife goes to the pagoda to chant, 'Cock, cock,' sound of wooden fish, but I just want to listen to music with my friends." We thought about it and said, it's time for Buddhism to strongly embrace music without hesitation. If we listen to love songs, our minds become agitated and restless. But if we listen to Dharma music about noble things, our hearts also become noble, right? So, is it music's fault? No, music is just a means. The content of the music, whether it has Dharma principles or not, is what matters. Therefore, it's time for us to change this. Many monks and nuns are allergic to music. That's a mistake. Now is the time to know how to use music. One day, when we go to pagodas, we'll hear monks and nuns playing instruments and singing Dharma songs. Buddhism will truly flourish then, and people will love coming to the pagoda because music has such power. Here's another thing. Sometimes, out of fear of violating precepts, we miss opportunities to do good. There are such cases. In Jin Yong's The Smiling, Proud Wanderer, there's a situation where Ling Huchong, the young swordsman, is injured and escaping enemies with Ran Yingying. He falls unconscious in a melon patch, bleeding and thirsty. He asks Ran Yingying to find water. Ran Yingying passes by a melon garden and hesitates to steal a melon because she's learned not to steal. She believes she can't steal without the owner's permission. So she thinks, should I let my senior brother die of thirst rather than steal a melon? Jin Yong presents this situation for us to reflect on precepts. In the end, out of desperation, Ran Yingying has to pluck a melon, feeling immense pain in her heart. She brings it back, and Ling Huchong eats it, recovering from thirst and avoiding death. So, we see here that sometimes we don't understand right action and cling too rigidly to precepts. In such cases, we must be bold, even if it means stealing a melon to save a life, because saving a life is much more important. We must be bold and do it, not hesitate like Ran Yingying. Ran Yingying hesitated because she wasn't enlightened enough and misunderstood the spirit of the precepts. So she wavered. In this case, we must understand that Jin Yong only presents a hypothetical situation. In our own lives, we must be vigilant. There are cases where we adhere to precepts strictly because violating them would cause sadness and suffering to others. But there are also cases where we might violate a precept to bring peace and happiness to many others. We must know what to do. Dear Buddhists, be vigilant. You must discern when to uphold and when to let go. The important thing is the ultimate goal, whether it brings peace or suffering to people. Just weigh those two things, whether to do it or not. Remember that, and it will become right action. Because precepts are only a small part of right action, not everything. If you only focus on upholding precepts, you might be mistaken. Remember this. The ultimate goal is to bring peace or suffering to others. Weigh those two things throughout your life, and your actions will become right action. Speaking of precepts, there's another point. There are many things not explicitly regulated by precepts, but we must still avoid them to prevent falling into error. For example, don't talk loudly and disturb others. Is that a precept? No, it's not. But if you're on a bus and some people want to keep their minds peaceful, and you talk loudly about your family matters with your friend next to you, forcing others on the bus to listen to what you're saying, that's also not a precept, but it's causing nuisance to others, and that's wrong. That's not right action. Have we ever experienced this? The bus isn't very big and two people are talking loudly, forcing everyone to listen. It's very annoying, right? Has that ever happened to you? Has it ever happened that you were talking loudly? Yes, it has. Or if you throw trash around. I always say this, to know if a country is prosperous or not, just go out on the street and see if there's trash. It's that simple. Why? Because if the citizens don't litter, it means their civic consciousness is very high, right? They would never dare to litter, thinking about the common environment of their country. And when citizens have high civic consciousness in their daily lives and economic activities, they are usually active and responsible. That country's economy is guaranteed to be prosperous. But if you go out on the street and see people still littering freely, you can be sure that your country will remain poor because the civic consciousness of the people is still very low. We keep talking about this, and it's heartbreaking. How can we not understand? There are things that weren't regulated by precepts in ancient times, but today they pollute the environment. How? In many ways, including smoking. Smoking pollutes the air. Everyone is breathing the same air, and suddenly someone blows a mouthful of smoky, dusty air, filling everything. It's not a precept, but it disturbs others. Okay, let's stop talking about that. It's annoying to keep hearing about it. What about merit, Panna? Merit is also right action, but it must be created through action. Precepts are about not doing. Merit is about doing. There's a difference between precepts and merit, right? You create merit by not doing? No, by doing. Do you understand? Good. What is merit? Merit is helping others benefit from wholesome Dharma. Let me repeat the definition. Merit is helping others benefit from wholesome Dharma. In that definition, we see two elements. First, helping others, and second, through wholesome Dharma. Remember that. Helping others and through wholesome Dharma. For example, there are some forms of help that are not through wholesome Dharma, so they are not called merit, right? For example, inviting someone to drink alcohol. That's helping someone. But is it wholesome Dharma? No. So, is it merit? No. If you treat someone to gambling, that's helping them, but is it wholesome Dharma? No. So, is it merit? No. If you give someone a pornographic film, that's helping someone, but is it wholesome Dharma? No. So, is it merit? No. If you pay for someone to go to a nightclub or take ecstasy, is that merit? No. If you pay for someone to go to Tutan to listen to Dharma lectures, then that's merit. So, when we talk about creating merit, pay attention. It's about helping others through wholesome Dharma. Not just any kind of help that you call merit. That's not merit, it's creating demerit. For example, if two people are fighting and you want to help them by pouring gasoline on the fire, what happens then? So, helping must be through wholesome Dharma. We need to understand this. There are actions that are neither good nor bad, and don't affect anyone else, nor do they affect our own morality. These are not called karma. Don't think that whatever you do is karma. No. When you do something that affects others or affects your own morality, that's called karma. But there are actions that don't affect others and don't violate your own morality, so they are not called karma. For example, waking up in the morning and washing your face. Does that affect anyone? Does it affect your morality? No. So, is it karma? No, it's not called karma clearly. For example, if you sing a happy song just for yourself, and the song has no bad content, just joy, like, the sun rises, I go to plow. You sing it for yourself. No one else hears it. Then it doesn't become karma, clearly. Or if you bite your fingernails, does that harm anyone? No, it's your own nails. If you bite someone else's fingernails, then it's karma. Or if you scratch your head, you're scratching your own head, not someone else's head. So it's not karma, right? Or if you just sit there and fall asleep. Is that karma? No, it's not related. So those are things that are not considered karma. Only actions that are karma are those that affect others. And if they are positive karma, they create a good influence on others, leading to their happiness, moral growth, or spiritual development. That's called right action, whereas creating a bad influence is unwholesome karma. So, right action is creating a good influence, making others happy, increasing their morality. And spiritual demeanor, that's a meritorious deed. So, we hear about spiritual cultivation. Why do we use the term spiritual cultivation? Because it means doing something regularly, diligently. Every day. That's called spiritual cultivation. Spiritual cultivation is not easy, not simple. And right action must also be practiced. So, practicing right action also requires intensive cultivation. It means practicing regularly, every day, every hour. That's what spiritual cultivation for right action is like. We must examine every action of ours to see if it becomes a wholesome deed that helps people and benefits society, or if it's just a neutral action. Previously, we distinguished between right action and neutral action. Neutral action doesn't concern anyone. But right action creates a positive influence on our surroundings and on everyone around us. That's right action. So, every day we live, we do many things. We assume we won't do unwholesome deeds, or if we do, it's just a little bit and we'll regret it. We're not talking about that now. Now we only consider two types of actions, neutral action or right action. Throughout that day, do you have a good influence on those around you or not? If you don't have a good influence on those around you, then that day you fall into neutral action. But if that day you have a good influence on those around you, then you have achieved right action. Do you agree? That's how it is. And usually, for new practitioners, monks often say, try to do one good deed per month. Okay? For new temple-goers, try to do one good deed per month. That's 30 days, which is a bit risky. Maybe it's okay. After a while, they come to the temple and the monk says, now, can you vow to do one good deed per week? They scratch their heads and say, well, I guess I can try. Then after more time at the temple, the monk says, now, can you try to do one good deed every day? They start thinking, huh? Well, maybe slowly in the next life. So, it seems a bit difficult for everyone. But when we practice right action on the Eightfold Path, that's not the case. When we practice right action on the Eightfold Path, every hour, every minute, every action is a wholesome deed. It must create a positive influence on others. It's no longer a matter of once a month or once a week, but any action, even if you're alone in your room, raising your hand or moving your foot, it's all right action. It's that profound. So we might wonder, if we're alone in our room, how can we influence anyone? How can that be considered practicing right action? Remember our definition of action. It's creating an influence on others or influencing one's own morality. So those who practice right action, even when interacting with others, always leave a good impression in their hearts. Even if they can't do anything else, they leave behind love. Whoever you meet, you bestow love upon them, even if it's unspoken. Anyone you interact with in this life, even just a smile or a glance as you pass by, you've already given them love. Even if you haven't done anything else, you've already done something. Has anyone achieved that? The person who has done that is already skilled in practice. To reach the point where you meet anyone in this life, whether a stranger or an acquaintance, sometimes without even speaking, just exchanging a glance and a smile, and you've already given them love, anyone who can do that is truly a noble person. That's right action. Or when you're alone in your room, whether you're standing, walking, lying down, or sitting, you never think, oh, I'm alone, I can relax. No, even then, your mind is very proper and disciplined. You still maintain your morality. Therefore, we say that for those who practice right action, every day, every hour, they are doing wholesome deeds. Remember, it's that strict in practice. And don't forget that right action is much deeper than ordinary wholesome deeds. Remember that. If we say right action is doing good and helping people, then right action isn't profound, it's just ordinary good deeds and blessings. But right action is truly one of the steps towards liberation, so its meaning is very profound. Different from ordinary good deeds. Why? Because ordinary wholesome deeds are about helping people in regular life situations like providing food, clothing, teaching a skill, helping them find a job, offering advice or guiding them with methods, or building roads, bridges. All these actions aim to help people live more comfortably. For example, if someone has cataracts and is poor, and you organize surgery to restore their sight, or if there are people with Hansen's disease, leprosy, whom society has rejected and who cannot integrate into the community to work and support themselves, and everyone avoids them. They have to live together in isolated camps. Now you go there, help them, feed them, provide clothes, and give them medical treatment. Nowadays, there are medicines available. So this is still wholesome karma, but not yet right action. This wholesome karma. Right action is helping people have a more comfortable life. So what is right action then? If it's different from wholesome karma, what is right action? That's right, to practice. Right action differs from wholesome karma in that it also helps people, but with a very firm and strong goal. To gradually lead those people towards enlightenment and liberation. That's the difference between wholesome karma and right action, two extremes. Do you agree? Remember that. For example, if you give someone a loaf of bread and your only thought is to feed them so they're not hungry, that's wholesome karma. But if you also stand there and speak a few words about the law of cause and effect, about the suffering of transmigration, then that's right action. Because in your mind, you have the intention that you never give anyone a single penny without them also practicing. You must gradually practice. From now on, you're a right action practitioner. Remember that. So, when we create wholesome karma, we'll receive many blessings later. But then we'll just keep enjoying those blessings in samsara. But if we practice right action, we have the intention that we want people to practice for liberation and enlightenment, to transcend the human realm. Then later, blessings will also come to us, but our minds will always be strong, heading towards practice and liberation just like the Buddha. Even in his previous lives, the Buddha enjoyed immense blessings. He was once a wheel-turning king, meaning a ruler of the world. He was once a king of the heavens. He was once immensely wealthy and powerful, experiencing unimaginable blessings. But the ideal of liberation always burned brightly within him. He never indulged in those blessings. No matter what circumstances he was in, no matter how blissful, he always firmly resolved to seek practice and liberation. Our Buddha was like that, and eventually he attained Buddhahood. We must be the same. We must skillfully perform wholesome deeds, but we must also have an additional intention: to guide and help those we assist towards liberation. We must ensure that for every dollar we give to help someone, that person takes one more step towards liberation, one more step towards enlightenment regarding morality and noble spiritual values. Never give anyone a single dollar without expecting something in return. Remember this. From now on, all of us Buddhists, both monastics and lay practitioners, must have this intention. Never give anyone a single grain of rice without them practicing. Never. Make that firm declaration. Can you? And more practically, you can help them develop their morality and understand karma. That's the closest step. For example, if you talk about high-level liberation to two people who are standing there, always listening to you, and you give them some guava and bread to eat, and then you talk about life's suffering, transmigration, and the need to attain liberation, to become an arhat, to attain Buddhahood, they won't understand, right? They won't understand. So you have to aim a little lower. For example, you see someone shivering in the rain and cold, but you just give them a loaf of bread to eat. While they're eating, you stand next to them and say, in this life, there's karma. Karma is the cause of all suffering. All your current poverty and pain are due to karma. So don't be sad. Believe in karma and start creating merit. Gradually, one day, you will recover your merit and have a good home. So don't be sad. Let's talk more about karma next time. You speak gently and they listen. We're talking about someone who's hungry, has no clothes, and is eating bread, and you're talking about nirvana? That won't work. First, you must help them practice, and that means believing in karma first. Because believing in karma is the foundation of practice. If you don't believe in karma, you can't practice effectively, and everything you do will be wrong. A little higher, you can help people understand that everything in life is temporary and relative. For example, if someone is unemployed and you help them find a job, when they get a job, they're overjoyed. Then you take the opportunity to tell them, brother/sister, I helped you find a job, so you're happy now? But remember that everything in this life is temporary and relative. No matter how rich or happy you become later, remember that when you die, you have to leave everything behind. What we're looking for is something more meaningful in this life. The love between people seeking enlightenment to escape the cycle of transmigration. As for jobs, even if you find one, they are just ordinary worldly things. You help them by talking about such Dharma principles. If you feel like you need to go even lower, you can give them a CD of Dharma talks to listen to. Then they'll respect you more and listen more. So we say there's nothing we can't help people with. We must have an underlying intention when we help. Remember that. As Buddhists, we must always have a deeper intention behind our help. Don't just help for the sake of helping. For example, if someone hasn't taken refuge in the Buddha, we don't force them to immediately convert to Buddhism. No, we have a better way. We Buddhists are more enlightened. For example, at home, if our children watch too much TV, we don't say a word to stop them. That's a mistake. But with people we meet in life and help, we shouldn't force them to follow Buddhism. They might misunderstand, thinking, this person just helped me, now they're forcing me to follow their religion. This Buddhism is suspicious. It's not genuine. So we don't need to push them yet. Let them understand and appreciate the Dharma, and then they'll ask to take refuge themselves. Normally, we help them understand karma and the impermanence of life, and if they like to do good deeds, then they are already close to being a Buddhist disciple, right? That's good enough. We don't need to force them to convert. So one day they will naturally come to the temple and ask about Buddhism. We don't just give them a bag of rice and force them to convert. No. If we do that, and they haven't converted yet, we'll keep helping them until one day they come to the temple themselves and ask. We don't pressure people. But if we help someone and they suddenly feel inspired to seek enlightenment, that's like winning the lottery, a huge jackpot. That's the most noble right action. Helping people understand karma, helping them not cling to worldly life, and if finally we meet someone who has the right spiritual roots surpassing our guidance, and they gradually develop the aspiration to seek ultimate liberation and enlightenment, then that's immense merit for us. Our merit is truly great. These are future Buddhas. Those who aspire to seek ultimate enlightenment are future Buddhas. We must try to cherish them, protect them, and help them always stay on the path. Who knows? These might be the people who will bring great contributions to Buddhism and sentient beings in the future. This means that helping others is a Buddha activity like propagating the Dharma. That's all good. That's all right action, truly excellent. Or if we know of temples that do good deeds, we support them immediately. That's also a beautiful right action. Or helping someone peacefully practice meditation is wonderful. Those are beautiful right actions because those people are on the path to enlightenment and we are gaining immense merit ourselves. And there's this right action. If anyone can do this, I will reward them with a Chinese-made wave motorcycle. If anyone can influence the government to introduce the teachings of karma into schools and prisons, their merit will be immeasurable, boundless. It will change a whole poor country. If one person or many people together can lobby the government to introduce the principles of karma into schools because it's the foundation of morality without believing in karma, one cannot reason properly about morality. We must remember this. If we want solid moral reasoning, we must have the foundation of the law of cause and effect. That's essential. So, if we now create moral arguments without first establishing the premise of karma, those moral arguments will be flimsy and unconvincing. Therefore, karma must be introduced first, and then, on the foundation of karma, morality can be developed. And in prisons, it's the same. Some people come out of prison unchanged, their minds not reformed or improved. They might even learn more cunning tricks in prison from their fellow inmates, so they become even more dangerous when they get out. But if they go to prison to be reformed, to learn about karma and morality, then when they get out, they'll be less likely to continue on the path of crime. Anyone who can lobby the government to introduce the law of karma into schools and prisons will have immense blessings. They might even become a king in the next life, or be reborn in a heavenly realm. I'm not joking about this. I'm not joking. If anyone wants to be a king in the next life, go lobby to introduce karma into schools and prisons. And if you don't become a king in the next life, this life, I'll give you a Chinese wave motorcycle genuinely worth 6.5 million VND. I'm not kidding. So, right action, how do we do it? In this lecture on right action, I've covered many issues, but I haven't finished, so perhaps next time I'll talk more about right action. Time's up. So, let me quickly recap the questions. Student question 1. When I sit in meditation, I focus on chanting the Buddha's name, and then I see myself sitting before a deep abyss. I get very scared, but after a while, the scene disappears, and I feel very light, as if I've been pressed by a ghost. What phenomenon is this? Is it good? Monks answer, because you're just starting to meditate and your mind is still a bit constricted. It's normal to see such a scene, but feeling light after it disappears is a good sign for your practice. It's nothing serious. Just keep practicing the basics slowly. It's okay. Student question 2. I usually listen to Buddha chanting on my phone, but if I turn off the device, the chanting still echoes in my head and I go to the bathroom. Is that a sin? Monks answer, no, that's not a sin. It's not a problem. Even great bodhisattvas do this. So, the act of wearing Buddha images or statues is generally not recommended. It's a belief from other religions like wearing a crucifix. We don't understand that. But wearing the Buddha's image on your body and going to unclean places is not appropriate. Therefore, if you want to remember the Buddha, you should only wear symbols, like a lotus flower or a Bodhi leaf. Don't even wear images of Master Chuang Tuan. And when you chant the Buddha's name, you must learn this. When you want to chant, the chanting arises. When you don't want to chant, your mind should be clear. If the chanting still echoes in your mind when you're not chanting, it means you haven't mastered it yet. You need to practice so that the chanting only arises when you intend it and disappears when you don't. Student question 3. I don't want to become a monastic in the next life. And I don't have the conditions to meet a Dharma master in this life, only listening to Dharma tapes. Will I meet a Dharma master in the next life? Monks answer, if the Dharma master finds you lovely, they'll let you follow them. If they find you annoying, they won't let you follow. The student asked, is it okay to chant the Buddha's name in the bathroom because of the impurity of the body? The monk replied, what you accomplish is due to your mind. Why say that? Your body isn't that dirty, right? You analyze it a bit, but it's not that dirty. However, the environment still influences you, so don't say it doesn't affect you. Everything influences us. We are all ordinary beings. So we must be careful. Student question 4. When I make merit and people don't listen, can I wish that the merit be for myself alone? Can I enjoy all the blessings? No, you can't enjoy all of it. You have to share because you did it, so you get to share a portion of the merit. They give you money, so you get to enjoy a portion of it. So later, you will make a lot of money and support them. People who don't make merit won't make money. So, if you make merit, you will make money. Then you take their money, and in the next life, you will make a lot of money and support them. That's karma. Student question 5. My room is small and not suitable for a Buddha altar, so every time I prostrate, I take out the Buddha statue, offer incense, and then put it back in a box. I feel that the Buddha is very efficacious. Is that okay? Monks answer, yes, that's fine. Being sincere is enough. Student question 6. My spouse is of another religion, and I want to convert to Buddhism, but I'm afraid of being disloyal to my mother. Should I hide it? What should I do? Monks answer, there's no sin in that. Hiding from your mother is a sin. But if you hide your conversion from your mother will gain merit. So it's okay. Student question 7. My spouse is of another religion, they're all like that. Monks answer, oh dear. What's wrong with that? When I meet someone I live with, I often get angry. Then I apologize twice, and then regret it. This keeps repeating and makes me very unhappy. How can I overcome this with that person? Monks answer, as I said, you lack merit. You can't control your faults. So, just bow to the Buddha, repent, and naturally you won't repeat those faults. Student question 8. If someone, after hearing me talk about the Dharma, decides to leave their family and go practice, leaving their spouse and children in suffering, is that considered right action on my part? Monks answer, no, that's too far-fetched. Someone who is truly ready to become a monastic usually has their family somewhat settled. It's not dire. If you understand right view correctly. But if you teach incorrectly, then it might cause people to abandon their family responsibilities to become monastics. Nowadays, some people who talk about liberation sound so profound and grand that others become overly excited and abandon their families. That's because you teach the Dharma incorrectly, creating such a situation. But if you have a proper understanding of the Dharma and teach it correctly, then before someone becomes a monastic, they must arrange their family affairs properly, so that their absence doesn't cause suffering or hardship for others. Their absence might cause a little sadness for others, but not profound suffering. Only then can they become a monastic, and only then can they find peace in their practice. Otherwise, if others are restless, how can you practice peacefully? That's right. If your absence brings joy to others, then you can become a monastic.